Good evening and welcome to the NewsHour. Israel is in an uproar tonight after the country's parliament backed a controversial plan to overhaul the judicial system by passing a law that weakens the powers of the courts. The measure has divided that nation, sparked mass protests, and drawn rare criticism from the White House. Stephanie Tsai starts our coverage.
Today, chaos in the Knesset. Opposition lawmakers chanted shame and stormed out in protest ahead of the vote on judicial reform. With nearly half the seats empty, the measure won 64-0. There are 120 seats in the Knesset. Prime Minister Netanyahu praised the passage.
Today, we performed a necessary democratic step to bring a balance between the branches, so the government can lead according to decisions of the majority.
The opposition condemned the change in the strongest terms.
I look at the coalition celebrating and ask, what are you celebrating? That you're dismantling the Jewish state? They're celebrating the moment they threw everything that connects us into the dustbin of history.
Today's vote capped a months-long campaign by Israel's far-right government to take away the Supreme Court's power to block government decisions and appointments. For the past 29 weeks, tens of thousands of Israelis have taken to the streets opposing the overhaul. Early today, demonstrators tied themselves together, blocking the road to the Knesset.
We're here to protect our democracy. We were left with no choice but to go to disobedience, nonviolent disobedience.
Over the weekend, thousands marched the 45 miles from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, while businesses shut down in protest. Adding to the mayhem, Netanyahu was rushed to the hospital Sunday for an emergency pacemaker implant. That did not halt negotiations. But a weekend of last-ditch efforts to reach an agreement came up dry.
With this government, we can't reach an agreement that safeguards Israel's democracy. We will not give this up.
Netanyahu had postponed the vote in March after weeks of upheaval to give more time for debate. Many Israelis and allies abroad urged compromise, including President Biden.
Like many strong supporters of Israel, I'm very concerned. And I'm concerned that they get this straight. They cannot continue down this road. And I've sort of made that clear.
But months went by without any signs of hope, and demonstrators returned to the streets. A key group leading the protests, tens of thousands of military reservists who for months threatened to resign if the bill pushed through.
It's heartbreaking. Really. I'm so sad. I can't even express it with words.
Omer Dank, a former fighter jet navigator with nearly 3 decades of service, is now a reservist. But for the last 6 months, he's been out in the streets protesting the judicial overhaul. Having flown risky and legally scrutinized missions, Dank says he would hesitate to serve if he can't trust the government's orders.
We are bombing targets in very crowded places in Gaza, and you can kill a lot of non-involvement collateral damage from our bombing. And you need to know that the decisions are strictly lawful.
Reservists are critical in Israel's Air Force, leading many of the strikes in Gaza and Syria, and flying surveillance missions in the rest of West Bank. Military leaders say a mass resignation would hurt the nation's military readiness.
Nobody knows what will be tomorrow, I think. And I think it will be a very long and a very difficult period for the Israeli army.
So far, half of Israel's top commando unit has announced they will stop serving. Reservist Omer Dank says his time may also come soon.
If the government will keep following her plans, I won't be able to keep my duty anymore. So we'll have to look what is the weather in Israel society every day.
With today's vote fueling anger, the forecast calls for continued instability. For the PBS NewsHour, I'm Stephanie Tsai.
For more on the new law passed in Israel and the impact it'll have, we turn to Yochanan Plesner. He's the president of the Israel Democracy Institute. That's an Israeli think tank. He's also a former member of the Israeli Knesset and was the first Secretary General of the centrist Kadima party. Thank you for being with us.
Hi, Jeff. Thanks for having me.
Netanyahu backed off trying to push through these changes earlier this year. What's changed? Because the opposition is as massive as it ever was.
Yeah, what we're seeing are two sort of narratives that are coming to the fore this evening. Two are equally powerful and in many ways conflicting. On the one hand, the most massive, impressive protest that this country has ever seen. 7 months of millions of Israelis coming out to the streets, hundreds of thousands every evening just for the past week, but it's been taking place for months. And Israelis also, we see it in public opinion polls, are very passionate about their democracy, are opposed to this overhaul, and they've been expressing it in multiple creative ways throughout the past months. And at the same time, we've seen a coalition that, although it doesn't have majority support among the Israeli people for this overhaul, is extremely adamant in pushing forward this judicial overhaul that is fundamentally designed to change the system of checks and balances that characterizes Israeli democracy and to concentrate all governing powers in the hands of the executive branch.
Well, tell us more about how this overhaul actually aims to remake the court system, because as you pointed out, opponents say it weakens one of the country's few checks on power, and advocates say the judiciary there is too powerful and is controlled by the left.
Well, Israel is a democracy. For 75 years, we had a relatively fragile democracy, but very vibrant, and we're very proud of it, with support among the Israeli people, but without a constitution. So in our delicate system of checks and balances, there's only one institution that constrains the otherwise all-powerful executive branch. And this institution, the independent judiciary, the Supreme Court, is targeted by this overhaul, both its ability to conduct judicial review over the government, and this is what passed today, and there's an additional plan, and this is probably a very important point, Jeff. This is just one piece, one chapter of an entire overhaul. Now, when there were discussions of compromise as late as today, before it passed, the government basically refused to agree that any additional constitutional changes will be legislated with a broad consensus. And this is the main point. It's a chapter that passed today, and the government has an intention, the coalition, to continue. And this is why the protest is just intensifying, as we're seeing right this minute in the streets of Jerusalem and Tel Aviv.
The White House, as you know, released a statement today that says, in part, President Biden has publicly and privately expressed his views that major changes in a democracy to be enduring must have as broad a consensus as possible. It is unfortunate that the vote today took place with the slimmest possible majority. Does Israel's approach risk damaging its relationship with the U.S.?
Well, this constitutional overhaul, if not reversed, will have multiple negative effects on Israeli society, on the Israeli economy, on Israeli security, because it undermines the willingness of reservists to continue to volunteer to reserve service, and of course on our international relations, and first and foremost the relationship, the most important relationship with our U.S. ally that is based on common values, two democracies that build this wonderful relationship for decades. So of course, undermining Israeli democracy would mean undermining the U.S.-Israel relationship, but the world's largest democracy has a very strong partner and ally in Israel, in the Israeli people that are opposed to this overhaul, are fighting to reverse it. And in this respect, while the U.S. administration perhaps didn't have much audience with the Israeli government, it certainly does have with the Israeli people.
As you mentioned, the reservists throughout the Israel Defense Forces, some 10,000 reservists, have said that they refuse to show up for service in protest of this move. How should we read that? What's the significance of it?
The idea of the Israeli army is entirely based on solidarity, on willingness of Israelis to come forward and to volunteer. And this is what Israeli security is based on. And the fact that so many Israelis that have done so much for the country have been pushed to the corner in a way that they feel like they have to protest in using this most difficult and quote unquote lethal tool is a very bad sign for how the government conducted this policy. And this will mean that we are entering into a chronic crisis, because once the reservists pull out of service, the crisis will not end. The crisis will only end when Israelis are back together. And hopefully, I look at the Northern Star is initiating or legislating a constitution or a core of a constitution that will bring the country back together.
Yohan Plesner is president of the Israel Democracy Institute. Thank you for your time and for your insights this evening.
Thanks for having me. Thank you again.